show. And for those who don't know who this guy Jake is, he is a top 5 Las Vegas podcast of the Jake Gallen podcast, co-founder of crypto NFT consultation firm Nativ Research. He's a content creator, entrepreneur, and on top of that, he also is the Vegas Man of the Year in 2021 and an Entrepreneurs Magazine Top Las Vegas podcast. So with that said, let's see, I'm hearing a little echo on your end. Oh, well, all right, I think it's working now. All right, so with that said, Jake, welcome to the stage.
Andrew, thank you for bringing me on. Excited that we could finally do this. And I don't know if it was my internet connection or yours, but we're here and we're going to have a great conversation.
Yes, I'm super excited. And so for those who don't know, Jake is an expert at community building, NFTs, consultations, Web3. He's a stellar entrepreneur. He loves his city of Las Vegas, Nevada. It's all he ever talks about. And if you're ever in the area, hit him up. And with that said, we'll dive in here. And what I like to do is kind of talk about the superhero's journey of how you got to where you are. And so one of the first questions that me and the audience had is, tell us about when you grew up because you're born and raised in Vegas, right?
Born and raised, one of the, we call ourselves the unicorns. Only 25% of the Las Vegas population was born in the city. Very transient town.
Wow. So I got a unicorn here and I was able to capture him with the butterfly net. So fortunately it worked this time around. So you grew up in Vegas. Tell us, some of the first things you were proud of as a kid, just growing up in Vegas.
Growing up in Vegas it's a very unique experience. It really
looks like we lost Jake, but we'll see if we can bring him back here soon. Let's see what's going on. See, he's back in this room.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Oh, you there?
I saw you the whole time. I don't know what happened with this. It was weird.
Oh, no. All right. Hopefully third time's the charm. Okay.
Right?
So growing up in Vegas, you're talking about that?
Yeah, it's a very unique experience. It desensitizes you to sexuality because of the nature of the strip, right? Because it's a
Even as a kid.
It's a very female dominated city. There's a lot of women entrepreneurs, there's sex workers, you have strippers, you have cocktail servers, you have a very gorgeous community that exists here. But it's also very entrepreneurial based. The high school that I grew up at was not the best, as you could say. Grew up in a lower middle class area. Graduation rate was under 50% every year that I was there. And the reason why that Nevada generally is ranked 48th, 49th, or 50th in education is because most students end up dropping out and going and working on the strip and making, anywhere from $60K to $100K a year, serving drinks or being a VIP host or dealing cards. There's so much opportunity out here that education isn't generally in the purview. And that taught me at a very young age the power of networking, right? One of the common cliches is that your network is your net worth. In Vegas, that's completely true. I learned this at UNLV when I attended UNLV, graduated with a degree in kinesiology. I noticed that there was a large majority of students there who worked on the strip already. That was myself included. I worked 40 hours a week at Planet Hollywood and then later at Omnia nightclub as a busser. And at Planet Hollywood, I worked as a lifeguard and then went to receptionist, supervisor, cabana host, the basic premise of an average, I guess you could say, growing adult male in the Las Vegas scene. But UNLV, my last 2 years at UNLV, it became a grade 1 research university. So not much preference. There was not much incentive for education. So but the cool thing about Vegas though is it's a very young town. It's barely over 100 years old. The strip wasn't built until the 50s. And just recently, I would say probably over the last 5 or 6 years, has started building outside of the strip, outside of hospitality. Right now we have some very emerging and blooming markets. The film industry has moved out here, the adult entertainment industry, tech, which we could go into. Myself and about 500 others are building this blooming NFT community that's existing. There's a very large creator economy out here. YouTubers who are moving out here, movie stars, rap artists, musicians, painters. Everyone is moving out here. You could even call, I guess, chefs an artist of some sort as well. So what I realized growing up at a very young age is that one relationship can really change your life if you just meet the right person and they give you opportunities. There's so many experiences out here of coworkers or colleagues who are either serving drinks at a table and they meet a guest who really likes their spirit, their charisma, their work ethic, and then offers them a job, and then they never have to come back again. So the city, on my podcast, before I moved it completely to crypto, I'd always ask, what does Las Vegas mean to you? I've said that to about 200 people. By far, 80% of the time, everyone says opportunity. And that's generally actually from the transient implants here who have moved to Vegas but aren't born here. And then for the 20% of locals that I've had, they generally say it means home or community.
Interesting. And I never thought about that. I mean, I admittedly grew up in the suburbs of Oregon, and so we had a little bit of a buffer. And it sounds like when you're in Vegas, you grew up real fast.
Wise beyond my years, my friend. It's funny too, because most people begin partying out here at a very young age. First time I started drinking was 16, and then by the time I was 18, I was experimenting, in substances and kind of like dabbling around on the strip, and I was in a fraternity, and we're throwing parties on the strip in the downtown. So then when you hit 21, you start going to the clubs, even though most people have fake IDs. So by the time most people hit about 23, 24, they're just like partied out already because you've been doing it for almost 10 years at that point. But
that is wild.
There generally becomes a point, and this happened to me as well, the temptative nature of the strip, where any day, any moment, any time, you could go to a strip club, you could go gamble and change your life. You could lose, you could lose everything. You could build literally anything that you want and also lose everything that you have at any given moment or moment's notice. That a lot of those who work on the strip or work in the hospitality develop severe substance abuse issues or alcoholism or gambling addictions, or they become sex addicts, or they don't know how to be alone because everything they do is socializing. We used to pregame literally everything, or pregame before we go to everything, before we go to the movies, before we go to bowling, because there's alcohol is intertwined into pretty much everything that you do out here. Everything has a pregame, everything revolves around drinking and partying. So you can really lose yourself. And that's part of my journey is actually, I was sober for 3 years because I almost lost everything. Got into some legal troubles, and it was due to my abuse of drinking and doing drugs. And it wasn't like there was no violent behavior or anything like that, but I had to step aside for years and really gather myself and figure out what I wanted to do. There was one night where, it's funny to say, I've said this a few times in public. After my first year of working at Omnia, I was 23 years old. I made over 100K. I was in the top 1% for income for somebody my age. I went to a strip club and dropped almost $8,000 one night, just completely blitzed partying. And, I had a good experience, definitely had some stuff I cannot share publicly, but it made me realize that it wasn't something that I truly enjoyed that much. The buyer's remorse that I felt in the morning was horrible. Oh my God, you feel like you've lost everything, and so a little bit after that was when I started my entrepreneurial journey, and I had to go sober for many years. And I said that I wasn't going to come back to it until I felt like I was in a positive place and I felt like my life was back on track to where I needed to be. And so then I didn't end up having another drink until May last year. So it was like almost 3.5 years of complete sobriety, no smoking, no drinking, no, only caffeine the entire time. So, and I working in the nightclub and working on the strip, I had dozens of friends and colleagues lose their lives to ODs and alcohol abuse. And So that's the dark side of Vegas that a lot of people don't really tell you, is that because of the immense amount of opportunity and the immense amount of instant gratification that you could receive through the Strip, whether it's through sexual satisfaction or monetary accrual, it's a great opportunity, but you have to have a fine balance, or you need to have friends to help you realize that you could be going down the wrong path without you realizing. I like to call it, and I've kind of coined it on my podcast, of like this vicious Vegas circle, where you just continually, you go party, you hate yourself the next day, somebody hits you up and says, hey, I have a table at excess, you go there, same thing all over again, and next thing you know, 3-4 years down the road, you're 30 years old and you haven't gotten anywhere, and you're still working at this like dead end job.
So you bring up a really good point. Like, it's so easy to, go and like run with the herd and go with the crowd and just be sucked into that black hole vortex of drinking, sex, drugs, like all that. Like, as the unicorn of the unicorns, what did help you kind of have that inner guidance system that says, okay, make sure I have a good network, I do want to be an entrepreneur someday? Like, what kind of helped with that inner voice, per se?
I would say it was my own unique childhood experience, as I was an only child, and my parents had me late in life. My mom was 38, my father was 34, so there was this very large age gap. So I was kind of alone. I was definitely a very social person. Always had friends at my house. I was always spending the night at other people's house. We were doing juvenile things out in the streets, and just things that kids in the 90s, like our age, would do in the early 2000s. Without cell phones, you could get into a lot of trouble. But I realized at probably towards the end of middle school or beginning of high school that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what the term entrepreneur was, but I knew that I wanted to live life on my own terms. So became heavily invested in sports when I was in high school, and I've always become heavily involved in whatever group I end up joining. In middle school, I was in Hebrew school, and in high school, I was involved in multiple sports. In college, I was very involved in the fraternity. And then once I got out of college, I was heavily involved into the nightclub. But with the amount of capital that I was making and able to save at the nightclub, I knew that I needed to redirect it into something valuable, or that I needed to go through some sort of experiences to get there. When I was in high school, I used to read a lot of letters or notes of elderly people on their deathbed, writing notes saying, like, these are the 100 things that I wish I would have known before I pass away, or these are the excerpts that I'd like to give to the youth of this generation. And the main common denominator of those was that if you believe in something, then just do it. At the end of the day, most of these people who were nearing the end of their life, they would always say that they think more about the things that they didn't do than the things that they did. And that really resonated and stuck with me still to this day. So I was generally always a yes man. Any opportunity that was presented, I would go do. I was constantly outgrowing my friend circles, which was really unfortunate, because these friends that you grow up with in different stages of your life, high school, college, so on and so forth, you develop these like emotional connections to them. And sometimes it's hard to detach from it because of your professional endeavors and like where you want to be in life. But over time, it became easier to add that space between everybody and to build new friend circles. And then over time, there's this metaphor that I like to use all the time. Is I kind of see life as like Wizard of the Oz with this yellow brick road, right? When you first start, you're in your comfort bubble and you don't want to go anywhere, but you know that you have to go to the end to see what's behind all those curtains. And along this journey, you go through all of these crazy adventures, right? You're in the forest and you see the scarecrow and all these different people. And eventually, when you're going down this yellow brick road, you're just gradually stepping out of your comfort bubble. So everything seems very scared. And then eventually everything becomes normalized. And then your comfort bubble catches back up to you. And so I was able to identify a lot of these moments where I felt like I was stagnating or I felt too comfortable with what I was doing. And so then I was able to step out of those and then go seek new opportunities of wherever they would be. And in Vegas, opportunity is plenty. You could literally take a dart and just throw it out into the open and you'd probably hit 3 different opportunities. It's just being able to identify it and then being able to act on it is really some of the big differences.
I love that. I love that. I love the analogy you use about the yellow brick road and when you talk about behind the curtain, that's so true. I have to remind myself too that no matter how good of Facebook social media post that you see of how successful, how happy people are, like you never know what's really going behind the scenes and like how much they might only be happy for those 2 minutes out of the day to take that selfie, but they might be miserable the rest of the day. And so it's just a good reminder to recognize that as we're on our own journeys, that there's always curtains that we put up, that other people put up, and to be aware of that. And I love hearing how you're reading about that life advice of what to do before you die. I did that when I was a kid as well, and because I always believe in maximizing life and living it to the fullest and embracing every opportunity. And it's good that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. I myself got lucky per se that my father's an entrepreneur, so at least knew it was possible at a young age. And so going back to your entrepreneurship journey, tell us about that. You knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur in high school. I believe you said you didn't really, then you said it's been 5 years, so you got more involved in 2017. And it's kind of tell us about your entrepreneurship journey from when you started and to where you are today. And feel free to brag all you want. We'd love to hear about that.
So I graduated UNLV fall 2015. So my entrepreneurial journey didn't really start until after that. Actually, on my calendar that I have, it says year 7 because it's actually 7 years since I graduated college. So that's really when life started for me, is not going by these social constructs that society wants you to follow, because those are generally, if you're following their herd, then you're generally not going to reap the benefits of the people who can control or grow the different allocations of social capital and physical capital and intellectual capital and so forth. Those are 3 terminologies that I use to identify different opportunities. And I'll get into that once we get into crypto.
You're good.
So 2017, so first year after college, really just partied. I'm not even going to lie. I literally went to so many different raves across the country, from Groove Cruise to Ultra to EDC, Coachella, Electric Forest. Just really went out and had a really good old time. And then during the end of 2016, I started following my first passion, which I still want to do, which was to try to write a book. It still sits on my computer. It's called a Raver's Hand Bible, and it's basically 200 pages of how to identify a rave, where to get the best spot within the crowd, how to approach these certain situations. It was a really cool experience. And then 2017 is when everything really changed. 2017, my father and I opened up an antique and collectible store called Next Gen Pickers. Growing up, I mentioned that I grew up in a lower middle class area. 2008, financial crisis happened. My father was a painter, lost his job, started participating in the growing trend of storage wars and American Picker style treasure hunting. So I used to his benefits the world of antiques and collectibles, and I had the capital, and I knew that I needed to have some real world experience to succeed at entrepreneurship. And I didn't go in knowing that I was going to fail, but I knew there would be trouble ahead. Most entrepreneurs generally don't hit the jackpot on their first business attempt. I've read that the average is about 5 to 6 businesses or different types of projects that an entrepreneur participates in before you find success. So opened up the antique store, ran a storefront business, which, as we know, most of those are going to be obsolete within the next 10 years, 15 years. But it taught me how to deal in the B2B side, dealing with banks, dealing with payment processors, dealing with other guests or customers, and how to set up a store, and all these different things that you can't even think of until you're in that position, managing employees and dealing with your parents and, just being a boss, like a young boss. That same year, also my buddy moved back from Reno to Vegas, and he had a really cool idea when he was at UNR, and it was called Chameleon. And basically it was a B2C or C2C ticket verification app. So when I was younger, EDC just moved to Vegas in 2011, a bunch of ticket fraud, scammers, stuff like that. It's not nearly as bad now. And so we created this app where, in short, we'd partner with ticket providers or event promoters, and they would give us the analytics, and then we'd put it through our system, and you could download the app. And if somebody's selling you a ticket, you could scan the ticket, and if it was real and the experience was successful, you could rate them 5 stars. There was a social media component to it, kind of like an Uber for tickets, essentially, what the idea was. And then also that same year in 2017 is when I got invested into crypto. And this is kind of like one of those world-shattering moments in my life. Maybe a few times before that was when I did mushrooms when I was 18. That really broke down a lot of the social constructs that I thought existed, which really didn't. And then this one with crypto, a friend was working on an altcoin project. I won't mention it because this is part of the story I'm about to tell. It was a smart contract platform based off of a humanitarian principle. So think of like Ethereum, but for the United Nations, essentially. So I invested in that. And then he started telling me about crypto and about Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I was like, wait, I've heard of Ethereum before. And if you go back to my Twitter in 2016, I remember stumbling across Ethereum on Reddit in like October of 2016 and tweeting about it. And I was like, hey, this smart contract platform is really cool. But I never really put together that there was like a financial component to it. I just thought technology sounds really cool, you know? Yeah. And so 2017 really went heavy into crypto investing. I was trading tons of altcoins if those people are out there trading like Ant shares and Golem and Neo and Gas and Sia Coin and all these like weird things that were happening. I ended up making a decent amount of money during that time. And then in 2018, I took everything that I made, which was about 6.5 Bitcoin at the time, approximately a little over $50,000, put it all into an ICO, and lost everything. Everything that I'd made in 2017, gone. So now starting all over again. Had 2 businesses. I was down to like a few $1,000s. It was very risky. And that was a big turning point and learning moment for me of how to be responsible with your finances. Didn't have any financial background before that. And so then over the next 2-3 years, that's the same year I got sober, which was, I think it was right before that moment, actually. I was taking about half of what I was making at the nightclub and just buying Bitcoin and Dogecoin, just those 2 only. And
in 2018?
And end of 2018 was mostly Bitcoin. And then 2019, I started just piling money into Dogecoin. And I was like, if the internet ever figures out what this thing is, then it's going to take a fucking rocket ship up.
Yeah.
Which a little bit more on that. And so I was buying those 2. I was spending $40 a week on groceries, didn't buy any clothes, really just stopped going out, really cut down on my expenses. And I said, this is my last opportunity to really get in on this crypto rocket before it happens. So I was aggressively buying Bitcoin under $10,000 and Dogecoin around 1/3 of a penny to 1/4 of a penny.
Wow.
And then end of 2019, we closed up the antique store, worked on it for about 2.5 years, really cool experience, or 1.5 years. Ironically or unironically, February 2020 is when we decided to close up Chameleon, which was about like 2 weeks before the pandemic happened. So that was just like very good timing because we would have been screwed really hard. And then the pandemic happened, the strip closed, 30% unemployment in Las Vegas. And I'd always been a big fan of podcasts. I was a big fan of Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss, Lex Friedman, and all of the like one-on-one type podcasters like we're doing here. And then I had been doing a ton of research actually on podcasts. I went back towards the end of 2019, and I was watching every single one of Joe Rogan's episodes, and I had a piece of paper next to me and a pencil, and I was writing down all of the filler words that he would say in an episode. And I started with the first 10 I watched completely through, and then I would skip a few. And so I probably watched 100 or 200 like all the way through. And I was watching how he improved through his podcasting skills, and did the same thing with Tim Ferriss. And then kind of got a grasp and realized all of these great podcasters, all of these just great entrepreneurs were absolutely terrible at everything they did in the beginning. Absolutely awful. But they gradually improve. And the one thing that they all shared was that they were very confident in their ability to grow, not necessarily to succeed, but they were very confident that their skills would improve. And so when the strip closed, after about 2 weeks of sitting around in my house and watching Trump, I just give this like barrage on Fox and watching the economy implode, I had this like do or die moment that if I was ever going to start a podcast, it was now. It was during the time that everybody was sitting around, everyone was fearful. And I've learned in crypto that you always buy the fear, right? You buy the blood and sell the greed is the basic financial motto. I essentially did that with the podcast, and I went and tapped into all of my different networks that I had grown, right? I could mention that I continually outgrew a lot of my friend circles. So I tapped into all these different entrepreneurial and leader networks. My first two guests were nurses. One of the nurses I had the first COVID patient in Las Vegas. She worked in the respiratory division.
Wow.
So those two episodes did really well. And then the downloads tanked. The first two episodes had like 200 downloads each in a week. And then the third episode had like 5 downloads. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I was like, oh geez. But I was like, I know if you just keep growing, this is the time to network, to work on my conversational skills, and just understand if this is something that I actually want to pursue. And it took me about 4 months. I was doing 2 episodes per week, sometimes 3. All I had to do was just sit at home. There's no job or anything like that. And I was just reaching out to people. Before I started the podcast, I wrote a list of like 200 different people in Las Vegas that I wanted to meet with or network with. And to my surprise, I would just DM some of these large accounts and they would respond and say, yeah, it was weird, right? It's like you have no podcast. These people won't respond. But if you say, hey, I'd like to share your story on my podcast, like here's 4 hours of my time. And do you need me to send you money? Yeah. And right? Do you want my grandmother's maiden name and the address that I grew up on and my social security number? That was like another epiphany that I had, was that we're social creatures at the end of the day. And as long as this world that we're moving into of this creative economy, if our conversations can be captured and turned into content, then it's mutually beneficial for both parties to participate in a podcast or whatever sort of content creation that you're engaging in. So during this time, continue, push on. And it was about around episode 60 or so was the last time I really had to reach out to anybody. It was, I've done almost 200 now. Around episode 60, I was getting bombarded by like PR companies and marketing companies and friends with referrals and like verified accounts reaching out to me and the reporters. It was so crazy like how fast it happened. And so I'd continue to start taking on as much as I can, having all these conversations. And meanwhile, I'm doing this all completely myself. I'm doing all the editing. I'm doing all the social media posting, doing the conversation, doing the engagement, and having the conversation, setting it up. But it was a really, really cool experience. And then everything again changed last year. So I've been in crypto since then, 2021, the rise of NFTs. NFTs came onto my radar in January. Didn't know what NFTs were. I'm going to be completely honest. Completely missed that boat. And around the same time, my business partner, the co-founder of Nativ Research, had reached out to me on Twitter, and he said, his name's Chris Devitt. He said, hey, I think we should meet up. And I just said, why? And he said, you keep popping up on my Twitter feed. And when I would tweet about, I've been tweeting about crypto and Bitcoin since 2017, but it was never the like shill fest that you see of like, buy my coin, number go up. It was like very philosophical and ideological views on the technology and where it was headed. And he said, I've never seen anybody have this much in-depth knowledge about crypto that lives in Vegas. So we ended up meeting and we ended up getting on a bunch of calls, and turns out we shared a lot of the same views of what was happening and the potential integration into Las Vegas and the parallels. So the first NFT I ended up buying was called Mooncats. It was what's called a rediscovered project. So once NFTs started blowing up, there were a bunch of blockchain enthusiasts who were going through the history of various blockchains and finding abandoned NFT projects and recovering them and bringing them to everyone's attention. Mooncats at the time was the second oldest NFT project. And through my own experience of owning an antique and collectible store, that completely made sense to me. It was what's called the first generative art project. So it was the first ever NFT that was created by an algorithm, essentially. It was the first cat NFT, and there's all kinds of other things that happened. So I took about half of the profits that I made from Dogecoin and just what we call aped into it, put a lot of money into it, and it ended up turning out pretty well. And then it really piqued my interest into NFTs, but more so in this subsector or niche of NFTs called historical NFTs. And turns out that a lot of people were interested in Mooncats, so much that Sotheby's auction house, the largest auction house in the world, reached out to me about selling Mooncats at Sotheby's.
Wow.
And so, of course, I'm going to say yes. So I ended up being the first person to sell Mooncats at Sotheby's. We generated a little over $100,000 in sales from that. And a month before the Sotheby's sale, I also was a part of a $200,000 sale where I sold a Genesis Mooncat, which is a black one, part of the collection, to a very large crypto influencer named Pentoshi, who now has like 500,000 followers, for 70 ETH at the time. So it was a little over 200,000. And so between those two events and around that same time, I decided that this was my opportunity to finally build an image in crypto. So I realized that a lot of these historical NFTs, there's no information out there at all, like zero, right? It was just rediscovered. I had a YouTube channel. I had a podcast. At the time, I think my YouTube channel was only around like 400 subs. I mean, it's not much now. It's around 1,200 now. But I just started doing straight webinar type videos and tutorials about Mooncats. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's probably about 25 videos on there now.
Oh.
And it turns out a lot of people watched them. There's some videos that have like close to 2,000 views in a very like niche kind of collection. And I started gaining a lot of followers since that Sotheby's event. My Twitter account went from 2,000 to I think it's a little over 6,000 followers now. The Instagram account went from 2,000 to about 9,000 followers. LinkedIn, Facebook, friend requests, and it just like to me, it felt like the right moment. That moment to start creating Mooncat specific content, again, with the same philosophy with the podcast, was specialize in a niche, become a leader in that niche, and then you can grow outwards from there. So now I've become one of the community leaders for Mooncats. And now my podcast, the Jake Gallen podcast, I've converted into an NFT and crypto podcast primarily. And now it covers mostly the historical NFT space. So I'm going around at this point in time and trying to network with as many historical NFT creators, influencers, investors. And then once that brand becomes bigger, then obviously I could go into the broader NFT ecosystem or crypto or wherever that kind of leads. But during the same time, and I'm almost done. So,
this is fascinating to hear. You're good. Yeah.
During that time that Chris and I met up with Nativ Research, a woman reached out to me. She messaged me and she said, hey, you have a lot of technology, or you have a large background and experience in technology and blockchain. I think you should come to Blackfire and we should meet. I had no idea what this place was. She said that she was a huge fan of the show. I went to this building. 4-story building. It's a 150 acre plot owned by UNLV in collab with UNLV, multi-million-dollar facility. And I'm like, what did I just walk into? Like 4 stories. There's like accelerators in here and gaming equipment and esports arenas. And I'm like, what? Like hundreds of gaming computers. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
And so we end up sitting and talking for 3 hours. And she basically says, like, I'm a big fan in your show. I'm a big believer in whatever you're doing. How can I help? And so I ended up bringing Chris back, and we decided that we're going to start hosting blockchain meetups inside Blackfire Innovation, which is where the UNLV Office of Economic Development is, the International Gaming Institute, a lot of like regulators and stuff have offices there. So we started hosting meetups, and I told them, and Chris and I shared the same vision, that crypto and Vegas are very synonymous. They're both 24/7. They both embrace the entrepreneur, the creators. They're both permissionless. You could go in to a casino floor and you can participate in whatever endeavors that you want. There is a little bit of a limitation there, as I mentioned before. You can't lose all your money and engage in some lewd behaviors. But same with crypto. It's open source. Anybody can participate. It's based off of meritocracy, the amount of work that you put in and the effort that you put in as well. You can receive the amount of merit that you show, right? It's just like put in the effort and you'll be rewarded for your endeavors. So at this time, we scaled the local crypto community, and synonymous with, there was another NFT group which we collabed with. The first NFT meetup had 4 people. The last NFT meetup had almost 400. Wow. And this was in less than a year. And our NFT meetup, or that's the NFT meetup, and it's a same community. Our Nativ research and UNLV meetup started with about 50 people. We had close to 100 people this last time. We had bank executives, 3 members of the gaming control board, representatives from the UNLV like president's office, different research labs, entrepreneurs, all kinds of weird people coming in and trying to find a lot of interest. But then we turned to a point where we realized that crypto and Vegas is going to have a little more trouble, a little more red tape. Crypto, if you just say crypto, it kind of has a negative stigma to it because of the Silk Road and Bitcoin's anonymous and blah, blah, blah. But what we realized is that NFTs and Vegas are actually much more synonymous than using a cryptocurrency integration. Simple of like, take Bitcoin, play craps kind of idea, right? So with NFTs, they could be event tickets, they could be membership rewards, they can have all types of utility, experience-based, art collectibles, blah, blah, blah. And so we now, through Nativ and our consultation firm, we're partnered with the City of Las Vegas. We have regular calls with the City of Las Vegas. We work with the Gaming Control Board, UNLV, the Arts District, Downtown Leaders, and the Startup Accelerator, the largest startup accelerator in Nevada, called Startup Nevada, that's raised has raised over $70 million for people who've come through there. And we've kind of just become this we've become like the runway controllers, those guys who are on the runway with the orange traffic cones who are kind of like directing people where to go. That's kind of what we've been with the City of Las Vegas, is helping people find right direction and build this like large community and really turn Vegas into an international NFT hub. And that's kind of like where we are today. Just had a conversation with somebody who's about to open up an NFT gallery down here in Las Vegas in the Arts District where I live. And we're just continually growing, and I'm building a brand, and now I'm going to start moving into something that's interested me for a long time in content creation, which is called crypto lifestyle. So think of like your general YouTubers who walk around and they give those like vlogs, or they go review businesses and stuff like that. I want to try to turn my channel into that direction, but I'm currently still in the process right now. But I'm somebody who's a big firm believer in open sourcing ideas, so that you will, if you're somebody who stays true to your word and you say it in public, that you'll actually do it. So this is the situation that I am now, but I'm having so much fun. Was rough for many, many years. Didn't know if I was going to make it, but I knew that if I just put my head down and continued on, then I would be here. And so it's been almost 2 years since I've worked at the nightclub, live only off of my crypto investments today. And we'll see what happens during this year. Who really knows?
Yeah, and I love your journey so much because you're one of the people who you made a bunch of money and then you lost it all, and you made a bunch of money and you're like, okay, how could I keep coasting this time or keep increasing versus losing it all? And so, and the fact that you mentioned too that people have 5 or 6 businesses before they quote unquote succeed, like I love how you're literally exhibit A. You're like, hey, I started Chameleon, I started investing in this coin, I did this venture, and then bam, all of a sudden this NFT venture, your podcast, your brand's blowing up. So that's very exciting to hear about. And diving deeper into the NFT space. So let's pretend that people are tired of hearing NFTs everywhere and like, what is going on? Like, can you use, and obviously you probably talk about this day in and day out, but for those listening to this show, like if you want to start from scratch in the NFT space and you're like, oh, it'd be cool to be able to buy something and then sell it for X more later, like how would you advise someone to quote unquote start from scratch in the NFT space?
It's so tough because NFTs have really only been around. They've been around since 2011, but they really didn't blow up until recently. So there, a lot of the tools still haven't been built, and the acceleration of adoption is vastly outpacing the tools that have been built. So there is no real way to start. I would say the best way to start is to understanding what exactly it is. A lot of people think it's just an image that's a token on a blockchain, but it's really not that. What NFTs are, and I could throw a few definitions at it and we'll see which one sticks. It's digital ownership. Digital ownership has never existed in humanity. Some may say, yeah, but I own my avatars inside Fortnite, but Fortnite can repossess those at any time, right? There's stories. The creator of Ethereum, Vitalik, actually started Ethereum because he said that he had been leveling up some Warlock in WoW for years, and World of Warcraft repossessed it from him and took it from him, and he was so pissed that he ended up creating Ethereum. So that's the basic idea. Because we are moving into this digital world, this creator economy. You could call it Ready Player One minus the hopeful dystopic outcome that is in Ready Player One. I hope we're all living in containers. In terms of like, so you could look at it from what it is. You could look at it from what people are doing, right? From the market side. I like to call it a gamified social arenas. So if you're an investor, every type of asset that you invest in has a market cap. Same with NFTs. The only difference with NFTs is that it's a gamified experience. So there's a token. Some have different game mechanics of like staking and all these different principles that are tied to it. And so you're basically, a bunch of people are just throwing a bunch of money into a pool and playing this game. But then what's cool is you're scaling different technology on top of it because it's programmable. Also, what it is tokenized internet culture. So for those who've lived primarily on the internet for 10 plus years, mostly Generation Z and some of the younger millennials like ourselves, it's a completely different society than what is presented in the real world. There's a pseudonymous economy. A lot of people, you can build your own identity on the internet, right? Like the early adoptions of that was, if you had an AOL screen name, right, you could put whatever screen name you want. People ask ASL, age, sex, location, and you could put whatever numbers you want. You could literally be whoever you want. Yeah. So now with NFTs and a pseudonymous economy, you can literally build that avatar out. If you want to be a warlock, or if you want to be Jake 2.0, right, or you want to be Andrew the Yeti, and you can buy a Yeti avatar, and you can brand yourself as a Yeti, and then you can take that avatar and that persona and turn it 3D and then walk with that identity through different metaverses, different games, right? So imagine if you had this new internet identity that you own every single piece to it. You own the IP over the name, you own the the intellectual capital, the social capital, the followers, and then you could take it into any world, right? You could go take it into GTA, you could go take it into Call of Duty and all these new games that are evolving. Because right now the faulty issue with centralized gaming is that if I buy a gun in Call of Duty, I can't take it to any other first-person shooter games. But with NFTs, you can, because you own that gun, and the technology isn't completely there, but the weapons are interoperable to play within all the other games. So this is why you see a lot of it's like NFTs work very well with games, and a lot of gamers understand that. There is a lot of hate though on NFTs too. I don't know if it's because people don't actually understand what's going, or there is a little bit of the tech bro culture where large numbers and large sales, like I mentioned earlier, intimidate people, or they salty is not the right word, but they're angry that they didn't get to participate in that early innovation and reap the benefits of making those large amounts of money. And then it kind of gets thrown in their face sometimes as well. And so you have this kind of like clash that's existing, but people will understand. And the cool thing with NFTs, example I use a lot is, let's take an NFT car or an NFT Lambo and a real Lambo, right? Both can equally be worth $250,000. What are the things that you could do with both of these? Both of these I could sell, I could buy, I could loan it, I can drive them around, right? I could drive one in the real world, I could drive one in the metaverse. I could burn them or blow them up, right? I could take the token version and send it to a burn address so it's gone forever. I could take the Lambo and blow it up whatever I want, or do whatever I want. But what are some of the things in the digital world that you can't do in the real world? I could turn that Lambo into a picture. I could turn that Lambo into a larger car collection. I could program on top of it. I could change it to fly in certain circumstances. Like, there's so many different things on the internet that have never been explored because people haven't been able to use they haven't been able to use the power of digital ownership. So I'll explain it in one other definition, and then I'll let you talk. Basically, all you're doing is the blockchain is just like a decentralized ledger, right? It's an open source database that anyone can view at any time. You can audit it. You could see all the history that's ever happened, and you could store data inside of it as well, right? So before, the best way to describe it is a big use case is for photographers and for meme artists, right? How many times have you screenshotted a meme and posted it, right? Or taken somebody's photography and shared it, but you have no idea who the artist is. And they've in the Web2 world, which is the non-crypto world, the amount of times that they've tried to show ownership through a watermark, or they tag their Twitter handle in it somewhere small, or there's just like these little tiny figments of personalization that they try to tie in there. But then people go on Photoshop and erase it and claim it as their own.
Yeah.
But if you took the picture or you created the meme and you mint it to the blockchain, you could prove that you were the first person that did, because there's a timestamp there and it comes from your wallet. So those are easy use cases. That's why the primitive technologies right now of art and collectibles has worked so well, because you could prove that you're an owner of these tokens. And then in those tokens, you can add different utility. Like if you own a Bored Ape, you can go to this in-person event by proving that you own it because you have the token itself or the password behind it.
Yeah, I saw that actually. There's like a New York City restaurant where you have to have a certain token just to be able to eat there, and like each token's like costs a minimum like $30,000 like or something like that, which is wild. And so you mentioned that right now the demand way exceeds the supply for the NFT space at the moment. And I recently had my first NFT experience. I got involved in Bro Tomatoes. I don't know if you saw that launch. And I forget, like Nick something on Twitter. He's an influencer, and he launched it for a good cause, like help feed more people and stuff. But it was interesting, I had to get like a Phantom wallet, and then he used Sol, I think it's for Solana.
Solana.
Yeah. And then I had to use a Solana to then buy the Bromato, and then be able to add it to my NFT collection kind of thing. So when you said like it's actually trickier to get involved, people realize, like, I agree, because I'm like, oh, and I consider myself decently technically savvy, and it was pretty tricky. But if you were like try and walk your grandma through getting an NFT, how would you go about walking your grandma through getting an NFT?
It depends on the technical literacy of grandma, to be honest. The UI and the UX for crypto is very bad right now. They're working though on different solutions to make it as user friendly as possible. But you could take that issue and you can apply it to the internet of the 90s. It's a similar idea, and this is a lot of critics of crypto like to bash that. It's very energy intensive, or the amount of money that's being cycled through it could go to better causes, and all of these different applications of futility that people like to throw at it. It's something that it's something that could be fixed. It's something that's actively being worked on, and you just have to give it time. Nothing's perfect to start, although with the exponential curve of technological adoption increases every day by a few units upwards, right? It becomes like that hockey stick growth. So crypto will scale much faster than the internet did. And then whatever is after crypto or integrated with crypto will scale much faster than crypto did. That's why I think NFTs are scaling so much faster. So then the next thing of the metaverse, which is the big buzzword, right? Facebook is turning their company into a metaverse company. The metaverse will probably scale faster than NFTs are, and then social tokens and so on and so forth, until the next technology outside of a crypto or cryptographic function proof is adopted. So I just tell people, like, grandma, you're gonna have to hold on for a little bit unless you really want to put your time in and commit. You go to Coinbase if you're in America. That's the most user friendly. You could go. I always say go check out things on OpenSea just to see what kind of interest you have. The best source of information you're going to find in crypto comes through Twitter first. Twitter is the primary communication platform. Discords, for those who don't know, it's just basically the gamified version of Slack, right? Slack is for professional corporate life. Discord is for crypto and gamers. And podcasts. Those are the three best sources. Be very wary of YouTubers who are shilling bags because they are paid shillers. How-to videos do really well, but if somebody's telling you a coin is going to moon, just know that there's some sort of ulterior motive, generally some sort of financial compensation that has been tied to their reasoning for saying why Dogecoin is going to go to $4,000 and have a $4 quadrillion market cap.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
But just sitting down and trying to understand what's happening, I think it is very, very important. And this is the message that I try to echo to all of my peers and all my friends, whether they're here in Vegas or out on the internet, is that things are changing pretty rapidly. You do not want to get stuck behind, and it is still early. Yes, there's over, I think, 300 million people who have ever purchased cryptocurrency. There's about 1 million people who have ever purchased NFTs, which, when you look at the larger scope of the world, I think 4 billion people, I believe, have the internet. So you're saying you're only 10% of the way there. And as internet applications are adopted, like Elon Musk's Starlink, right, that 4 billion will go to hopefully 7 billion. And then those 300 million people in crypto could eventually go to 7 billion. Same with NFTs. So you're never too early. You're never too late, honestly, either. I guess it just depends on what interests you most with crypto and NFTs. Are you interested in making money? Because if you're interested in making money, you're surely going to get wrecked. With crypto, all you have to do is just be in the market and be patient. I can't tell you how many times I've missed out on literally millions of dollars by selling too early when I should have just sat on my hands. So just buy and hold. Like, it's literally the easiest. If you think you can outtrade the market, you're probably not going to be able to. The market is this internet beast of greed and despair and depression and intellectuals and curious people. That's why these charts are so volatile, is everyone's still trying to figure out what exactly it even means. But just know that the technology actually has a lot of use cases, and they are beginning to emerge. And this is why I like to participate in the NFT space. I think that it is much more open for the creator. I think it's because these NFTs, you could tie a personality to the person who's buying it. Similar to, if you're familiar with Gary Vee, when he was selling sports cards, there's a higher value for the card that Gary Vee is selling than if I tried to sell that same card to you, because you could say, oh, Gary Vee used to own that card. It's similar with NFTs, where you say, oh, Cat Dad's me. That's my pseudonym in crypto. Mm-hmm. It's telling me this moon cat, so therefore it has applied value because he's contributed this much effort to the crypto space. So that's the financial component. But a lot of our clients and people that I actively engage with who are just interested in crypto are actually bringing up a lot of interesting utility and use case perspectives from it. The gentleman I just spoke to earlier is opening up an NFT gallery in Las Vegas, and he wants to do NFTs for that, but in terms of like a membership, right? So you have the NFT is a ticket, but then the NFT is also redeemable for discounts that could be airdropped to you, and coupons and one-of-one experiences, and future airdrops or whitelist for projects that may come out there, or you own the NFT to his gallery, and then you have a one-time redeemable ticket to display all of your NFTs in his gallery and host your own event. So the NFT really exudes the curious individuals who like to embark on wild experiences and journeys. Like that's the easiest way and most complex way to put it.
Yeah, and I know OpenSea, they're like the top NFT platform at the moment, right?
They are the largest. It's similar to everybody shopping at one Walmart in the entire world. That's what OpenSea is right now. It's there's a few different marketplaces, but right now it commands like 95% of the volume.
Wow.
So obviously, if you're in technology, you know that the way to succeed is that if there's a Goliath in the space, the best thing to do is just unbundle one section of what they do best and then become a specialized version of that. Mm-hmm. So we're starting to see this now with OpenSea as the major NFT marketplace. There's now LooksRare, which is a decentralized marketplace who's trying to do the same thing. And now we're starting to see like gaming specific NFT marketplaces. I've seen like an influencer specific NFT marketplace. So the competitors are now trying to unbundle what OpenSea has done. So I don't think they'll definitely always be in the center stage, but just like today with most crypto exchanges, who trade what's called fungible tokens, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, all these other ones. Binance was a Goliath for a while. Before that, BitMEX was a Goliath. Coinbase was a Goliath, and now FTX is here. But a lot of the volume is spread across multiple exchanges, and so I think that's eventually what will happen with OpenSea over some time. It's just, as I said, that the amount of demand is vastly outpacing the tools that have been set in stone yet. So we'll get there eventually. But there's a lot of issues that OpenSea has that we could probably talk another 2 hours on.
Yo, I bet. And just double checking too, FTX is different than Forex, right?
Yeah. So FTX is it's the most valuable crypto exchange in the world. It was just Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF, is 29 years old. He's the richest billionaire under 30 years old. So he's 29. He's worth, I think, $30 billion. The Heat Arena is now called FTX Arena, where he plays basketball. They're a sponsor for UFC. You'll see FTX. They are a sponsor with the MLB. There's a FTX thing on the side of Resort World out here in Las Vegas. So they're really all over the place. He was also Joe Biden's second largest donor. There's some, whether that's for lobbying or whatever the agenda is there. He's a really cool guy, just a young kid who made this literally all in 4 years.
Wow.
He didn't get into crypto until 2017.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I think I heard his story on My First Million, where he figured out that you can sell higher in Japan's Bitcoin marketplace versus America's Bitcoin marketplace. So he found a way to like create an algorithm you can buy in America and sell in Japan and just be making hundreds of thousands of dollars per week, essentially.
Yes, it's actually called the kimchi premium, and it's in Korea. It was in Korea, and that premium actually existed in the traditional markets as well. But then, as there is a central governing body over the regulated markets of stocks and commodities, they could easily cut out that premium and give it to all of the payment processors. So he ended up getting, and definitely might not have done everything completely out in the open to get that done, because you had to have a residency in Korea to have it done to trade that 15% premium.
Yeah.
But he managed to do it and made a bunch of money. And FTX is, we call it like the degen exchange. It's just for leverage traders, mostly people who are trading on margin and options and things like that. For most of the world, the FTX US is only a small version of what the global FTX actually is.
Interesting. And what about too? So you talk about OpenSea, like, so if I'm grandma and I want to be able to get an NFT from OpenSea, do I first need to download Coinbase, upload some money to Coinbase, get some Ethereum, and then download the different Coinbase wallet, put Ethereum in that wallet, then I go to NFT, and then I can pick and choose what I want depending on what's in my Coinbase wallet? Is that correct?
This is what frustrates a lot of beginners, because you do have to have some sort of understanding to crypto or be an internet native. Mm-hmm. So right now with OpenSea, you can't buy with dollars because dollars are regulated by the US government. And since it's an unregulated market, they don't allow it. Only Nifty Gateway on Gemini is allowed for dollars, at least at the time of this recording. So you have to acquire Ethereum. The best way to acquire Ethereum, which is an asset, is to buy it on Coinbase. And then you take Coinbase, you take the Ethereum that you bought on Coinbase, and you send it to what's called a Web3 wallet, which is MetaMask. So you send it to your Ethereum wallet inside of MetaMask. And what Web3 is like the equivalent of signing into a web page and signing in with Google or signing in with Facebook. Instead, in Web3, you're signing in with your financial crypto wallet. So instead of having it saying Andrew Weiss is signing into Facebook, it's saying Andrew Weiss's wallet, essentially, but a bunch of numbers and letters that represent you. Mm-hmm. And that's the power of being a self-sovereign individual, is that you don't have to have your image tied to it. You just have the wallet where you can choose to be public, or you could choose to be pseudonymous or completely anonymous. It's up to you how you want to present yourself and your financial holdings to the world. You don't have to disclose your identity. And this is why a lot of people choose to embrace crypto. But what's coming, hopefully this month, is Coinbase is opening up Coinbase NFT Marketplace, and they are simplifying the entire experience where you can just purchase NFTs with dollars and call it a day.
Wow. Wow.
They just announced recently that they partnered with MasterCard. So MasterCard will be doing the payment processing for the dollars, and Coinbase is going to be rolling this out. They were supposed to roll it out in December, and now it's February, so I'm hoping it's coming pretty close. But Coinbase NFT Marketplace has over 3 million people already pre-registered, and there's only 1 million people who've ever bought an NFT on OpenSea. So you're saying the market is essentially going to like explode 10x probably the amount of participants, which means all the prices go up, which means more demand. And it's like the thing that everyone hates, where NFTs just keep going up in value, is going to keep happening. So just got to understand that it's not too late. I thought I was too late when I bought Bitcoin at $1,200 or $1,800 was my first Bitcoin investment. I thought if Ethereum was $111, my first purchase, I thought I was late. I was like, this thing is already up like 40,000x or whatever the case is, because Bitcoin started at, I think, a third of a penny. Mm-hmm. Not too late. You just got to look at the difference between crypto and, I'll call them the legacy financial instruments of stocks, is this idea of mean reversion. So in stocks, mean reversion means that once you vastly outpace the amount of buying pressure or selling pressure, then it eventually just gravitates back to the medium and the average. And that's because you have You have market makers on both ends making sure that it stays within a certain allocation because whatever is happening behind the scenes. In crypto, it's all about adoption, right? So in the stock market and the gold markets, the amount of people who have been participating has already been happening for hundreds of years at this point. So you're probably not going to see a 1 or 2, 3% growth in people participating in stocks. But now with crypto, essentially start at zero. And so to get up to 300 million, we still have what, another 100x from here just for cryptocurrencies, and then NFTs you probably have another 1000x or 10,000x over that amount of time. But with NFTs it's going to become, but there's so many more there's so much more utility that can be intertwined into NFTs, as with coins are pretty much just like a store of value or a transactional layer, or so we call it the settlement layer, I guess you could say. So never too late, grandma. Just if you want to go through the process to learn how to navigate crypto, there's many. You could just type in how to buy an NFT on YouTube, and there's a lot of stuff. Or just wait for Coinbase to roll out their NFT marketplace where you could just buy with dollars and simplify the entire experience.
And will you still be able to like buy an NFT on Coinbase marketplace for like $20, and then someone could still offer you $40 to buy it from you, kind of thing?
Yeah, the metrics should definitely be the same. It depends on what you're buying. Obviously, with Ethereum, this is where we come into some of the technical complexities. Ethereum has gas issues right now, which basically means that the network is congested and the solution layers haven't been either properly adopted or built yet. So some of these transactions are getting up to literally $100 just to buy an NFT, and then you have to pay the 5,000 or whatever it is on top of it.
Jeez.
So the Ethereum blockchain has become highly disadvantageous towards the beginners who do not have a lot of capital to allocate to the space. So now they're trying these alternative chains like Solana and Tezos and Avalanche and I guess now Theta and some of these other ones, because there's essentially no community. So you get to be one of the first movers. So everything is theoretically pretty cheap because there's no culture that's been built. So you get to help build the culture, but also means that you have a much longer road ahead of you to get to, you know, these crazy $69 million sales that have happened.
Interesting. This is so wild to think about and talk about.
Yeah, there's a lot of trade-offs. It's just understanding. At the end of the day, it comes down to internet culture. You're trading against people who are building their own identity, their own persona, but they're also self-sovereign. So that means that the entire, and there's never been a time in the world where every single person on the world can participate in any sort of financial market just with a computer and an internet connection.
Yeah.
Before, in the traditional markets, you had to be an accredited investor, which means you had to have $1 million of assets. But then how do you get $1 million of assets if you're not allowed to invest? Oh, but the SEC is protecting you so that you don't basically wreck yourself and become poor based off of poor financial literacy and decision making. But what, on the contrary, and what's alternatively happened is that those who now participate in a decentralized and permissionless network have actually accrued a lot of money and even generations upon generations amounts of wealth. So what we've been told from the US government and from society is that they're protecting you, but actually they've been harming us this entire time.
Yeah, because a lot more people are being rich versus a select few becoming rich, essentially.
Largest transfer of generational wealth in human history. You could go back to my Twitter from when I first got into it. It's a belief that I've held very firm ever since I discovered what Bitcoin was. I've never had so much conviction in my entire life than reading the Bitcoin white paper and being like, holy shit, this is the future. And I still have a large amount of faith in Bitcoin. There's a lot of conversation and argumentative discourse surrounding Ethereum versus Bitcoin, and semantics and culture and maximalism and toxicity and all these different things that you can find. But the cool thing about crypto is that it bleeds into every single industry that exists in society: tech, finance, media, art, collectibles, psychology. You could literally go on and on and on and name every single industry. Healthcare, like it just, like education, it continually finds its way into everything and has utility. So it's there for anybody that is either interested or wants to build their life, especially in this creative and digital economy where there was a report that came out today that over 50% of Las Vegas jobs are probably going to be automated away in the next 5 years. And so you can do this with a lot of other jobs as well. People are having remote conversations like this. All the interviews are now remote. People are working remote from home. People are ordering delivery. They're taking their physical prescription and mental health prescription online. It's not going to change. And the only thing that's going to happen is that once we get past this like Web2 medium and technology scales, we'll be having this conversation in VR or AR of some sort. And so it'll be digital, but it'll feel more real than what this is. And obviously some of the bandwidth and stuff that has to be worked out as well.
Yeah, and going back to when you talk about sitting on your hands, like now that you've learned from those experiences, like how do you know how long to hold on to an NFT or how long to stay invested in a crypto? And I know you're not a financial advisor, so this is not quote unquote financial advice, but like based on what you've learned, like do you have any like general rules of thumb that's worked for you in that space?
Now that I live off of my investments, I'm a bit more conservative than I was. When it comes to NFTs, I try not to buy 5 or 10 of anything at the most, unless I have like a very, very high conviction bet. My thesis in crypto has always been to pretty much go all in on something that you believe in. And that's how you really acquire generational wealth. And there's only 4 things that I've really gone all in on, and all of them have worked really well. In 2017 was Bitcoin. In 2019 was Doge, 2020 was Ethereum, and 2021 was Mooncats. So 2022 hasn't came yet, but those are the only 4 that have really gone like 80% of my portfolio. But that's because I've done a lot of due diligence and research to understand like where it's going to be. And then you have to actively manage it when you put that much of allocation in it. I would say that FOMO is one of the big drivers of these like exponential price increases where you just see that green candle and it's up 400%. It's people fearing that they're going to miss out on this life-changing opportunity. But being in crypto now 5 years, I've learned that these life-changing opportunities happen literally every day. Wow. So literally every day. Yes, some of the opportunities have a smaller window, but a lot of these opportunities, if you just hold it and slightly size out when you feel comfortable, then you'll probably make more money. But one thing that I would say, which where I left millions of dollars on the table but completely changed my life, was with my Dogecoin trade, right? So I was buying Dogecoin literally at the bottom, about a quarter of a penny to a third of a penny, 15 sats to 20 sats if you denominate it in Bitcoin. I sold everything at 5 cents. So I pretty much missed out on the entire move upwards, but I still did have a fresh like 20, 30x. Yeah. And I was sitting there at the computer and I kept playing this thought in my head. I hadn't been back to Omnia. They were calling people back pretty soon. And I realized that I could literally change my life and live off of this money for probably 4 or 5 years if I just sell everything now. And this sense came over me. It was the same sense of going in all in on Mooncats. It was the same thing of starting the podcast. It was that you need to do this right now, because having a safety net, you'll treat your life differently if you know that if you make a bad decision, you're protected by the money that you've made. I never had a safety net in my entire life. All the money that I've ever made that I've ever spent was dollars that I made. And so I never had a safety net my entire life. And it was the one moment where I realized this is my safety net. This is where I can now operate life completely different than the 28 years that I had operated beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And that decision ultimately ended me just saying, Jake, you're an idiot if you don't sell everything now. Sold everything, and then it 10x after that. God damn it.
Missed it by that much.
I've had a few friends have the same situations happened where they sold something and it gave them a massive safety net, and then it continually like quadrupled after that. But I offered them the same opinion and the same advice, and maybe they were like upset about it in a second, but they did tell me like, thank you for offering that advice, because now that I have some money in the bank and I could buy a house or whatever, I approach my investing thesis differently. And now I don't really make those super degen trades. I make investments based off of things that I prefer and things that I like and things that I'm interested, rather than just the number going up and the FOMO induced buy pressure.
Yeah, I'm also active on Twitter, and I liked reading this guy's investment advice that when you start off not having money, you got to do high risk, high reward behavior. But then once you get money, you got to do lower risk, lower reward behavior kind of thing. And just kind of, but also you like to use the analogy of the lobsters too. Like as a lobster, like everyone's like fighting each other, but then once you get to that next tier, it's just like, oh, I can breathe now.
Yeah, having that comfort, man. Sometimes I feel sometimes I feel bad for a lot of my friends, because I encouraged them to participate in crypto and all of these different financial things for 5 years. Maybe one or two actually did, and I get to celebrate those wins with them, but I don't get to celebrate these wins with those people that I've shared a lot of emotional connection with my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And so you feel this like sense of guilt that overcomes you. But you know that you got here based off of your own contrarian thinking, your own decision making, and the confidence that you have in yourself. And these you can still share that wealth with the friends that you have an emotional connection with, your future girlfriend, your parents, whatever it is. And it feels very rewarding to come in and be the guy who made it, or whatever it is. But just know that as long as you did your best to share that information with your loved ones, and even if they didn't follow it, it's not because they don't trust you. It's because there's something inside of them that is lacking, whether it's confidence or the self-deprecating thoughts or self-esteem or anything like that. And so I did feel guilty for a little while, and ultimately I was able to overcome that. But just know that if you're making the right decisions, at the end of the day, others will eventually follow you. And now a lot of my friends are now following my decision making, saying, I should have bought Bitcoin back then, or Dogecoin, or whatever it is. But I say, just be glad that you're here now, and that you've overcome whatever that demon is that you're fighting internally, to finally open your eyes to an alternative way of living that isn't induced by wage slavery of working that 9 to 5, or in Vegas, the 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. job.
Yeah. And it sounds like too, you're, obviously you being someone who does want to keep helping their friends and family and sharing the wealth and sharing the wins. It sounds like you are still to this day saying, get some NFTs, get invested in crypto. You're still early. You're not too late. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. I mean, there's definitely going to be some volatility each way, up and down. But I advise that if you're going to buy crypto, then you're going to need to hold it for at least 4 years. Like, go into it with the long-term investment thesis. That's what I did when I traded all of my shit coins in 2017. I invested it all in 2018, lost it. And then once I started buying again from 2018 all the way up until that Dogecoin trade of in January or February of 2021, I did not sell a single thing the entire time. So for 3 years, I was only buying.
Wow.
And this is how you acquire wealth, is to continually buy and sit on your hands until you feel that there's enough money sitting there that can change your life. There's so many times I wish I would have just sat on my hands. I'm going to say this again next time that we have a recording, and saying, damn it, Andrew, I should have taken the advice that I said on my podcast, and I shouldn't have told these things so early. But you live and you learn. Just know that when it comes to investing, you're never going to time the top and you're never going to time the bottom. So just put in as much money as you're willing to lose, which sounds, cliche, because everyone probably says that, but it's so true. And I learned that as I get older, and now that I build in the real world and try to be the intermediary of those crypto degens who live on the computer 20 hours a day and sleep 4 hours, to those friends who are working 16 hours a day on the strip and don't participate on the internet that much at all, and become only consumers of social media and not producers of social media. I try to help both sides of that. It's very tough, but just go in with the mindset that you're doing it for yourself and that you'll grow. And that's why we have conversations like this. Even if nobody's listening or no one ever does, we got to have a great conversation that is content for both of us that we get to share. And just know that it exists always on the internet, and we get to watch ourselves grow. That's a very important metric that not a lot of people pay attention to.
Yeah, no, and I love all that, and I love it's your self-awareness and your empathy is off the charts, of like being able to recognize, like, here's what it's like to be rich, here's what it's like not to be rich, here's what it's like to be the guy who's next to someone who's rich, here's here's what it's like to be the rich guy who's next to someone who's not rich, kind of thing. And so it's super I like how you're able to, like, to share your experiences and talk about, here's how I almost died from being involved in this culture, and here's how I was able to figure out to find the consistency to be where I am today. And so I love hearing, like, your genuine care and like your heart for, like, wanting to see other people around you win and be successful, and I love hearing, like, your gratitude and your own journey as well. But we're still in our infancy stage, both as brand creators and also as wealth builders, and it's going to be a part of that. And I know that we're coming up on time here, and so and I know the show is Rapid Results, and we kind of dove into that a little bit with, like, the NFT space and crypto space a little bit. But is there anything else, like, if people were just to get one takeaway from this interview about if they wanted to get rapid results in NFT or in crypto or in growing a community, what's, like, the one takeaway you want people to have for any of those topics?
I use the cliche term of Nike: just go out and do it. It's okay to feel vulnerable, and more often than not, you will feel very vulnerable, whatever you're doing. But just know that learning in public is the new style of growth. If you suck at whatever you're doing, like, for example, if you go to episode 0 of my podcast, awful. Oh my God, so many times I wanted to delete it. Very monotone, wrong word usage, the grammar is awful. It still at this day during this conversation, there's a few times I butchered grammatical errors and sentence structure and all of these different things to it. But just know that you're going to continually grow. But when you're learning in public, those people who are watching are growing with you, and they're learning with you as well. And those people who grow with you, they get to feel a sort of, like, acceptance and ownership over you, saying, I was one of Jake's first podcast guests, or I one of his first fans, or I started watching him at episode 20, or I was a guest on his show during episode 30, or I remember Jake saying this terrible moment on a podcast that he was a guest on, and all of the backlash that he faced, and I was there with him, supporting him. And so the people who grow with you, they take ownership over that, and they want to see you win as well. And that's an often overlooked component to this modern age of branding and marketing, is that with Instagram and some of these other social media platforms, as you mentioned before, they're not posting the 20 hours a day where they're sulking in their own sadness or despair because they didn't get 400 likes and they only got 200 likes on this picture, or the simple things that bring people down. But your community's there, and really tap into them. And it takes time. One of my podcast guests, who's a branding expert, brought this point to me. He said the difference between sales marketing and brand marketing is that sales, we're selling you a product and you know that immediately. Whereas branding and marketing, if you're branding yourself, it's not very obvious that you are trying to exude your brand. You're just being authentic and you're being yourself. And that takes years and years for you to be comfortable in your own skin and this image and this ideal that you want to portray to not only yourself and your family, but your community. That takes time. And there's no product, there's no dollars involved. That's just you putting out content and engaging with those people who want to learn from you. So at the end of the day, it comes with be okay with feeling vulnerable, because you will many, many times, and it never goes away. But the faster that you can accept that there are many weaknesses in your game, and as long as you offer more solutions than you do problems, you'll be at the top in no time.
Love that. Love that. Yes, got me pumped up.
Woo!
Well, Jake, this has been beyond awesome. And I love how you said too, we can just go into so many topics and talk for several more hours. So I'll probably definitely have to have you back on in the future and keep diving more into that. But in the meantime, if anyone else is listening in, they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to contact you?
Easiest way, you could just look me up on Google, Jake Gallen, JakeGallen. I'm most active on Twitter and YouTube and my podcast. So the Jake Gallen podcast, you could type that into any platform, Apple Podcast, Spotify, whatever. The video component of the podcast is on YouTube, and I also have some other content on there as well that you'll be seeing growing. So if you want to learn more about crypto, hit me up on Twitter. If you want to follow me on my personal and podcast and entrepreneurial journey, that's more allocated towards Instagram. But hit me up. I will always respond. Sometimes the DMs and stuff get a little overloaded, but I will respond. I will not leave you on unread, I promise.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, awesome. Well, Jake, thank you again for coming by. And if you're listening, definitely reach out to him. Amazing person, and happy to help out. And thank you all for tuning in today. We'll see you next week. Cheers.
See you guys.